do. I want to go to Birmingham and they're taking me on to crew. Send me back to London as quickly as you can. Oh, Mr. Porter, what a silly girl I am.
So Buggleskelly. I remember Buggleskelly well. Such was a small halt on the way on the main line from the store to Ballybunnan. No, yes, really, with no great importance. So no trains ever stopped there. Very trouble youth. He used to steal chocolate out of the vending machines at the station. So God bless him, he turned out like Humpty Dumpty in the shop. And there was this toothless old fool, old enough to be Adam. And believe it or not, what he sent the farmer for Buggleskelly Wednesday. And then there was Porter, up and humped with so-and-so. And the more I think about it, Robert, he was more a schoolmaster than he was a station master. By the way, just in case you ever come across our Mr. Porter, you might remind him about the shovel that he borrowed off me around 1935 and 36. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to have it back, thank you.
What's that he said?
This gentleman is the new station master for Buggleskelly.
Poor man. And him a stranger.
Why, what's wrong with it?
It's a brave man, the chap. No
there after that. Have you no heard the one about One-Eyed Joe, the Phantom Miller? You'd be a lucky man if One-Eyed Joe don't follow you. He was murdered by the railway, so he was. In the old days, he was a rich man, a miser. Some say he owns the Fooked Hill and the mill that stands on top of it. One day, the railway came along and built a tunnel right through the heart of the hill. Joe put a curse on the line and swore that any train that entered the tunnel should never come out. The first train came along there in the middle of this tunnel. Tunnel stood One-Eyed Joe with his arms upraised. Go back, he cried. But the engine driver drove straight on. The next morning, his body was found right there on the line.
We all know that the story of the miller is taken from old Mr. Porter. But was the mill a prop designed by the great theatrical set designer Alex Vachensky? Clearly in the short clip, a crude model was used to show the mill on top of the hill. However, for the filming of the scene with Porter, Harbottle and Albert hanging from the sails, it was the real thing, a superbly staged stunt at here, Turling Mill in Essex. We would like to think our three heroes did the stunt themselves, and in the chase scene it is indeed young Graham strapped to the carriage roof striking the gunners' heads with a rubber shovel. In an interview, an excited young Graham told reporters, "I did the stunt for real. The train was going over 40 miles per hour, at which point his older mentor, George Moore Marriott, stepped in and said, "It was doing no more than 10 miles per hour." Anyway, back to the mill. In 1937, Turling Mill was still in use, and it was chosen by Marcel Varnal for the film. Over a single weekend, the iconic Men on Sail scene was filmed. The Flying Leopards, a trio of theatrical acrobats who Will knew from his music hall days, they were called in to do the stunt, and even Will's stuntman stood in for Will. Although the mill scene appears towards the end of the film, it was actually the first scene to be staged. Will explained to the Essex Chronicle, "The scene represents where I climb out onto the sails with Albert and Harbottle. It was a rather ticklish job, so we hired 3 acrobats to do it. We spent weeks looking for a suitable windmill before we decided on this one. It is the best preserved windmill I have ever seen." The scene was masterfully directed by Marcel Varnel and used 3 cameras. The chase scene, which takes part in the mill, was filmed at the Gainsborough Studios on a mock-up built, which was indeed recreated by Alex Vachensky and his team. Marcel Varnel was a stickler for details, and a manoeuvre by one of his stunt double had to be repeated 5 times until Marcel was satisfied. The double had to wave and shout while the windmill rotated in a 180-degree arc. The movement was controlled by stagehands holding a rope obscured from camera view. First time, he swung too far. Second time, Marcel said he didn't wave enough. The third, he waved too soon. The fourth, he forgot to look up and down. And with the fifth attempt, Marcel cried out, "Got it!" much to the relief of the acrobat. The whole episode was witnessed by the locals and a group of children that had gathered. I would guess after the third attempt, Moore had taken Graham for a swift pint, whilst Will had set up camp for the night with his telescope. As by then, if you look at the clip, you will see that the dusk was splitting in and out during the editing, something Marcel may have regretted later. But what of One-Eyed Joe? Was there anything in the legend of the Phantom Miller? Indeed, there was, as Terling Mill is said to be haunted. Terling Mill is old, really old, dating back to 1590, around the time of the Spanish Armada. Just 13 years after the filming of the Men on Sail stunt, an incident did happen at the mill. Since 1902, the mill had been in charge of the Bonner family. Firstly, Martin Bonner, who had a short-lived tenure, followed by his son Herbert, who took over from his father in 1914. The mill, which was, as you would expect, was wind-powered. Used originally for grinding bark, converted later for the grinding of wheat, the windmill moved with times and adopted a cast-iron wind shaft and patented double-patent sails with an incredible span of 74 feet. The last miller, Herbert, was born at the mill and followed in his father's. He had once said to his neighbour, long-time friend William Humphreys, that I have lived in this mill all my life, and I shall die in it. Humphrey said Herbert would run on the top of the mill like a cat. In 1950, Humphrey said, that ain't no job for an old fellow like he, and he shouldn't be taking them sort of risks, him not being young no more. But in 1949, he took a decision that would lead to his demise, and I guess unheard of by fellow millers, Herbert decided to remove the sails and mechanise the windmill and introduce steam power. His father, Martin Bonner, must have been spinning in his grave. And one fateful day, in 1950, old William Humphreys, whilst tending to his garden, heard shouts of help coming from the mill. Not for 1 minute did I think it could be my old mate Herbert. Nobody will ever know what happened to old Herbert. The wheels had to be lifted out to remove Herbert from the heart of the mill. Minutes later, Herbert was no more. Was he a victim of a disapproving father? Did the mill take its revenge when he removed the wind from its sails? Or was he just a victim of a tragic accident? No one knows, but remember, and every night when the moon gives light, the ghost of the miller is seen as he walks the track with the sack on his back down to the black Boream. And the mill wheels turn through the night is still, and the helm lights flash from the ruined mill. He haunts the station, he haunts the hill, and the land that lies between. So what we just saw there was like this sort of tunnel area which the train would have driven alongside. The station here, either side, and unfortunately there's not much left to see. It's very much overgrown. But here we are in Cliddeston, otherwise known as buggleskelly. Over here you'll see a new patch of land called the Railway Cottages. Oh my god! Oh, Michelle! Run! Run! Steve, are you sure it's not Old Bones the River here and not old Mr. Porter? Jeez.
Buggleskelly. Buggleskelly. Oh.